resolution of the U.S. to substantially decrease its sale of military arms to the Republic of India. A is the framework. 1. We understand to interrogate the ethic of the state, and we understand the state as a benevolent actor. Sub 1 is the most educational because it gives both teams equal access to making in-round arguments. Sub 1 is the most educational as we don't. That was fair. This is the most educational as we don't waste time debating casting actions which we do not condone. Sub 1 C. This is the most educational because it interrogates rural arguments and debates which shapes our views when we become policymakers. 2. Debate is a critical side of resistance. Sub 1 A. Being privileged enough to make public speech acts is in an academic form that's only lack access to. We have an ethical party obligation and just systematic forms of oppression. The B point is that we define fairness as a question of social and human equity because we argue that the normative ways of debate that justify ethical nihilism because the ends matter more than the means to achieve those ends. 3. Ableism makes other forms of oppression inevitable. Woolberg 2008 writes the delineation between the able and the disabled body creates the starting point for things such as racism and sexism because they are an item that identify that one class is higher than the other. 4. The rejection of ableism, even when this is the most ethical thing to do, failure to do so is to say that don't split the status quo. Sub 1A speech acts for the 1AC are a way to interrogate the normal relationship between the state and the disabled body. Sub 1B exclusion advocacies steal ground from the affirmative and silences by limiting argumentation, which is the same logic that the state uses to exclude and oppress people. 5. Speech acts providing sub 1 hour rhetorical attitudes reveal our internal mindsets and is reflecting the daily action we take. 6. Roll the bounce for the theme that best deconstructs ableist logic for this space. Thesis. The normal relationship between the state and the disabled body right now needs to be disrupted because right now we are on a path to destruction. I will reiterate that in the impacts links. 1. The United States federal government provides pellet guns as a part of military anti-riot capabilities. They are frequently used to shoot at the faces and eyes of protesters in Jammu and the Kashmir region. Over 2,000 people have been blinded by the American pellet guns. 2. The military hospitals funded by the U.S. Department turn away patients with leprosy and polio. The third argument is that 7 people with polio died in an attack by radical groups using the ammunition provided by the United States. Yeah. Yes. We do. And the implications for the context as well. The context. The USFG will seize the sale of weapons in India in order to springboard a discussion on the methods of justifications of policies towards the disabled body. Once again, the USFG will seize the sale of weapons to India in order to springboard a discussion on the methods of justification of policies towards the disabled body. Solvency. 1. The springboard of discussion creates a space in which the disabled body has agency due to disruption between the normal relationship between the disabled body and the state. We argue that this is the starting point for change. For example, the civil rights movement, we pretty much the civil rights movement started with the state actually enacting policies which led to the directionality of external forces such as Black Lives Matter today. The second argument is that debate space is key to solve. Davis 2009 writes that education and training is vital if individuals with intellectual and physical disabilities are going to receive equal justice. The POI debate space is key because it's full of future policymakers and social advocates, so increasing awareness in this specific debate space is key. 3. State is inevitable. We argue that the epistemologies that justify working within the system are the most applicable to the real world. That means because we understand, those epistemologies understand how the real world works. The state sees external forces as radical entities, meaning that the only way we can deconstruct the state is if we deconstruct the state from the within, and the only way to do that is to break the normative relationship between the disabled body and the state. Sub 1A, college students providing for their friends and family members to not be deported, but the state perceive these people as radical entities who didn't appreciate the education they got through the use of media. Impacts. The first impact is disposable populations in a world that justifies the normative relationship between the state and the disabled populace. Disabled populace will be reduced to bare life. That pretty much justifies genocide. We have to change the way the state perceives the disabled body. The second impact is that of inevitable war. In a world where people always try to find a super race or try to exclude the marginalized population. We're always going to be seeing that we're always going to be seeing class conflict occurring with a lot of class conflict occurring with multiple forms of classes. The second argument is that Hitler's the justification for this. Hitler's idea of eugenics and Hitler's idea of mass genocide led to inevitable war at the point where the state already has this normative notion that the disabled body will always be excluded from the state. Where the only way to solve for war, the only way to solve for lives is if you vote for the affirmative, because we are the team that's taking down the epistemology which is being created by the state right now. All right, I'm done.
Is everyone cool? I think this is about taking a minute of a speech and then going in and just Alright, I'll start that now. Yours is going to be 1, 2, 3. Yeah, just 3 off. In case you know, potentially 1 more off on bottom. Actually, I'm changing the order. It's 4 off in case the possibly Going good? Topicality, our interpretation is the affirmative can only fiat the action resolution. Again, the affirmative can only fiat the action resolution. The B point is a violation. B fiat they fiat that the plan will be a springboard for discussion of disability, which ultimately goes beyond the mandate of the resolution. C point is the standard. The first is limits arguments that only being able to make the resolution is free to having the possibility of education, because anything that is not outside of bounds what is fiated by the resolution is something that we do not have access to discuss. And the second argument is ground is keep providing the access, the affirmative access, the ability to debate. The decent point is the voters is the owner for debatability argument. This is not a question of fairness, but it's a question of whether we can engage in debate. It's a prior question, the ability for education, because the debate is ultimately a form of dialogue and learning. In a scenario where the negative cannot engage in the debate, there is ultimately no possibility for them to garner any of their educational impacts. It means it's not a question of fairness, but it is not fair to because we need to evaluate the rules first. It is that is ableism. The eggs and weakness in the status quo, we tend to construct disabled bodies as inherently being unable to do certain things or being unable to engage in particular behaviors, and the idea that disability is a particular state, and the second argument specifically is that many of the ways that disability is understood are ultimately socially constructed. The way that we decide that particular people are unable to do something is as much a matter of the fact that we decide that we are going to be able to decide on their behalf rather than anything they're able to do. These are points of polite links in the conventional ways of viewing disablism to the extent that the plan says things like, oh, people become disabled to the point where we should rise. Our argument is that our argument is that this idea of an absolute binary between those who are able because they have eyes and those who are disabled because they have their eyes shot out is something that ultimately makes all of their impacts inevitable, because it reinforces the conventional framings about the disabled body, which are the root cause of their impacts. The C-sport is the impacts. First of all, this case turns all the arguments about oppression, and ultimately means that we solve the case better, and ultimately means that they harm the impacts of their own case. And the second argument is this independent disadvantage. Counterclaim? Can I have that text, please? I'll find it. Yeah. The United States federal government will cease the sale of weapons to India, to springboard a discussion about the deconstruction of the disabled body. USFG will cease the sale of weapons to media to springboard a discussion on the deconstruction of the disabled body. Competition?
What's the status?
Comment. Competition? The first argument is that we specifically, the permutation is impossible as a question of starting points. Our argument is that your starting point in this debate from a methodological point of view is to say that we're going to view the disabled body as one particular thing that ultimately is different from the able body, which ultimately is a reason why you cannot permute, because it's also a question of methods. Also, you can classify their argument that discourse is binding, which means that their discourse, the way they construct the able body, the one I see, is also binding. This means that they have no access to a permutation. All the permutation, there's no net benefit to the permutation because we entirely solve the app on the solvency. The first argument is we solve the app because the deconstruction of what the disabled body is a more valuable discussion than a discussion about particular disabled bodies. Ultimately means we solve for all their impacts and avoid the disadvantage. Right, case? On the framework, you say the fiat is key. We're going to agree with that. We're also going to crossify your argument about discourse. It means that we get access to critiquing the way that you use discourse in this round as being another disadvantage and a net benefit to the counterpart. Next, you say debate is a key side of resistance, and therefore we should evaluate oppression as a prior question. That is true. We do that benefit to the counterpart in a couple of turns. The first turn is totalizing theory argument is that identifying disableism as somehow the root cause of every other kind of oppression ultimately makes it impossible to solve for any oppression to the point where we decide that your racist movement is merely a bad version of this disabled movement, or that the movement against misogyny or various other kinds of oppression are merely permutations of the movement of the affirmative ultimately means that you exclude people who want Chicana movement collapse because the Chicanas, because it was unable to incorporate feminism and be intersectional, ultimately means that your affirmative collapse is too. You say specifically that it justifies nihilism. Too bad we don't do that. We are another approach to solving the problems that you talk about. Next, you say ableism is a prior question. This is also the same thing as your role about argument. The first argument is no reason why this is necessarily true. Argument is that in a scenario where there are multiple intersecting forms of oppression, it is better to evaluate those oppressions as a whole rather than try to identify one as being the root cause of others for all the arguments that were identified above coalition fracturing and totalizing theory. The next argument is the counter role of the ballot. Vote for the team that does the best debating by explaining the material impacts of their advocacy. Vote for the team that does the best debating by explaining the material impacts of their advocacy. First argument, this subsumes all the arguments in your framework because you can still make prioritization arguments about the importance of disability studies and the importance of disableism, but you don't get access to those arguments being automatically prior. Second argument, this is best for the broadest possible discussion on the thesis. The first argument is that your argument about polygons which say that people become disabled when we shoot them is ultimately an argument as to why you're linked to the disadvantage from a rhetorical standpoint because you construct a particular static conception of what the disabled body is. Argument that the point where so much of what happens with disability with the disabled body is socially constructed, that is ultimately a link, and it explains why it is that you're unable to solve because you've retrenched the rhetoric that makes disableism occur in the first place. The second, we solve the rest of your links. On the plan specifically, you say you're going to see sales of what you say this solves agency arguments. No, this doesn't solve agency because you create a particular construction which makes it impossible to solve agency in a world with the affirmative because you never have agency when your body is constructed as disabled by another, which ultimately makes it impossible for you to solve any of these arguments. Next, you say the base keeps solved. We agree, but we solve better. Again, you say the state is inevitable. Again, we agree with that. We are working within this framework fundamentally on the impacts. The first argument is we solve disposable population better. Argument is that the root cause of disposability, particularly in the instance of ableism, is the ability to construct this fundamentally different. People who we see as similar to ourselves can never be considered disposable. That's a matter of biology. Ultimately means that constructing a disabled body as not fundamentally different is ultimately the root cause of both disposable populations and inevitable war. Ultimately means that we will also win the argument that your non-intersectionality and totalizing theory makes other bodies of other races and other genders disposable in other ways that you're unable to solve from the
Okay. So, T, ableism, TA, counterplan.
When you say T ableism, what?
Your theory shell on T, your ableism DA, counterplan, then case in order.
Just as soon as I find the piece. You should have seen it.
All right. Time starts. On the violation, first argument that we meet, because what we're doing is we're fiating an action to start another action. We're not fiating the second action itself, we're fiating the first action. Then we have solving points that they go into, explaining how we're going to cause the second action. That's just included as part of our plan text to show the directionality of our plan. It's not something that we're fiating on its own over there. The second argument is that a counter interpretation is that the affirmative can fiat one action as long as it's and defend the implication of that impacts. The counter-intentions for this is that critical education, because when we force the other team to think on their feet about the implications of our plan and how we're going to be deconstructing ableism in the post-fiat world of the plan, that's good for critical education because it allows people to think about how they're going to be solving for the root cause of the issue. The second argument here is that hard debate is good debate because we debate for critical education, and then when people run interesting plans that are able to that deconstruct norms, that's good for solving for the root cause of the issue that we highlight. Then on their terms, where they say that this limits,
you have disadvantage grounds, and we fiat the implications from the context.
They have disadvantage grounds, and we have fiat the implications of their plan text, which means that they haven't lost ground because they haven't articulated specific ground that they've lost in this round. The second argument over here is that that are also cross-biased there. Or the second argument is that on debatability, how they're still able to run like 4 off onto our counterplane, even though we still have that. So debatability is not an issue over here. On the voter issues, we define fairness to be an issue of social. No fairness. Okay. Now to the ableism decide. The ableism decide bites into the counterplane also because when they're causing social construction to people that are because when they run a counterplan that then excludes that's an exclusionary advocacy, it's a kick basically that puts that excludes ground that we have the ability to. That's the same justification that the state uses to disable people. Look to our framework point on our case. We say exclusionary advocacies use the same justifications that the state uses to oppress able people. Extend that across to the sentence, so the counterplane links into that over there, and they're basically just doing the same thing. They're doing the same thing that the state uses to justify ableism.
Okay, please explain to me in one sentence, how is it that our advocacy of a counterplan is the same thing that the state does to disabled bodies? Please, what does that even mean?
The exclusionary advocacy over here is that exclusionary advocacy steal ground from the affirmative and silence us by limiting argumentation, which is the same logic that the state uses to oppress the affirmative. So that's what you're doing in this round. You just use the counterplan, just takes away our ground, just doing that thing. The second argument under here is that
we need a bright line.
We need a bright line
for who we're trying to solve.
For who we're trying to solve.
Or not who we're trying to solve. For like what we're trying to solve.
For what we're trying to solve.
What the state is doing.
And what the state is doing.
Specific forms of people.
To specific people. To people.
In order to solve.
In order to solve.
If they don't give a bright line.
If they don't give a bright line.
For what it means to be disabled.
For what it means to be disabled.
For what it means to be excluded from society.
Or what it means to be excluded from society.
Then there's no way they can solve.
Then there's no way they can solve
for their own
impacts that are in the
question. How do you solve for people?
We're solving
for what to solve or who to solve.
How do you solve?
We're solving for the adverse implications that the state imposes on people.
Okay.
Yeah. Then onto the framework. On the issues of totalizing theory and that root cause arguments about over here, the issue that the argument is stating that ableism in its root form is the idea of being able to see differences between people being able to oppress them based on that idea, and that's the root cause of all forms of oppression, because all forms of oppression just basically build off this one idea that I see that you as a different type of being, and I am able to hone in on something superior, and I am able to say myself as superior to you. That's one of the root causes of, that's one of the main justifications of all forms of oppression have, and that all stems from ableism. So that's the argument that we're making over here. The second argument is that, then we go on to the arguments that say that intersecting forms form an identity as a whole. The thing that all intersecting forms share in this one sense is that they use the ability to hone in on differences to oppress people, which is the main thesis of ableism. So then ableism.
So the argument we make is that ableism makes other forms of oppression inevitable.
The argument that we make third is that ableism makes all other types of repression.
No, not all. The framing I said is ableism makes other forms of repression.
Ableism makes other forms of repression. Not all.
Which means we don't bite into totalizing.
Which means we don't bite into totalizing theory. Then onto the thesis. Question. I'm not going to take it more. On the idea that the thesis that pelicans cause people to become stable, that the idea that the disability, the idea is that the state uses pelicans and action provided by the United States federal government to suppress people who share different ideologies as them, which then causes them to lose. Yeah.
The next argument is that we don't define these people as being disabled.
We don't
it's
define
the state who defines these people as being disabled, and we're doing is reading stories of these people.
We don't define people as being disabled. We say that the state categorizes people as disabled. We're reading stories and narratives about these people that have been suppressed by the state.
So we're changing the state's
definition
of what it means to be disabled.
Then on to the link page. The basic argument on the link page is that it's rhetorical, basically, that our rhetoric links us back to UK. But the whole argument against here is that we give you articulation that it's not us relinking it, it's that the state is relinking it back, and then the state's interrogation of their own epistemology is able to solve in this sense. Then move on to the impacts. Extend all of our impacts. They just said that we relink, so our impacts.
In a world where they have the counterplan,
but they don't bright line
for what they're trying to solve,
and they don't have a bright line for what they solve.
Like what the state is imposing on these people.
For what the state is imposing upon these people.
Then they will never be able to gain access to our impacts.
Then they are unable to gain access to our impacts.
Meaning that we're the only team who hasn't tried it out.
We're the only team that hasn't tried it out. Yeah, that's.
They also extend all solvency.
Extend all our solvency. On the alternative, they say over here that they say that there's no agency when the body is constructed. It's a construction of the state, not a construction of our advocacy. So constructing able bodies, it means that constructing them as bodies means that they're able to be included in the conversation, which is part of our solvency.
I'm going to go topicality, ableism disadvantage, counterplan, affidavit. Read that again, topicality, ableism disadvantage, counterplan, and affidavit. We will win this round on the fact that the affirmative team, by attempting to break down ableism, is in fact constructing more ableism, and deconstructing the disabled body disabled is the only way to solve the oppression brought up in the 1AC. Moving on to topicality, extend their we meet the fiat action to take a fiat. This, we're not going for topicality, there was no RBR in the theory. On to the disabled advantage. The first thing we say that advice in the CP as well, but through the social constructing, etc., how we're excluding their advocacy, excluding ground, etc. We're having an entirely different method of breaking down ableism. That is what we're doing. It's not excluding one part of their advocacy. We're specifically breaking down ableism in an entirely different method. And additionally, all the rhetoric here is linking more into the DA, because all there's talk about how we're excluding, etc., is constructing these binaries. That is the rhetoric that binds them into constructing more of this ableism, perpetuating ableism in the future.
They have to win an argument that says CPs are exclusionary. They're not. They're probably key to our access to the realm.
They have to win an argument that CPs are exclusionary in order to gain access to any of this, but they're not. CPs are key to net ground overall. Specifically, the picks are key to net ground, net flexibility based on what they're running on the affirmative team. Next thing they talk about how states using this to justify all this type of ground. We are debating over the method. Right now, their method is bad because it's creating a static construction of the disabled body, of disableism as a whole, and that is the bad thing. Now, our rhetoric, their advocacy, all bite into this. We're not stealing their ground. We're saying we need a different method because, yes, we agree this is a problem, but they perpetuate the problem, and we help fix it. They're next going to talk about how we need a bright line for what we're solving for, what the state is doing. This is the problem. Seeking to create a bright line, seeking to create a binary is the exact problem that we are critiquing and saying that you need to deconstruct this ableism. The difference between what is disabled and what is normally able is the problem. We need to deconstruct this and to force us into a bright line, saying we need to make this bright line is the problematic rhetoric. In addition, they also bring up how, like, oh, we need to, like, figure out how we're solving people. It's not that we're solving people. We need to deconstruct this mindset that says we can solve for their problem, instead deconstruct the very mindset that is creating this problem. Yeah.
Cross-apply their argument means rhetoric comes first.
Cross-apply their argument saying that rhetoric comes first. Their rhetoric on Brightline, their rhetoric on how we're solving for them is problematic and is a reason to vote against the affirmative team because they are perpetuating this logic of ableism that is the problem in the status quo. They say we have no way of solving for impacts. Clearly we do. We have a different method of solving for them. Deconstructing is key to being able to get rid of all these impacts that stem from disableism, all the impacts of other forms of repression, because if we don't start deconstructing this binary, we're not going to get anywhere. Is that good? On a CP, they said literally nothing on our CP. So extend everything on the counterplan that this discussion of deconstruction, our rhetoric, coming out of the LOC is the independent reason to vote for the negation team, because that is the only way that we can actually deconstruct the issue of the disabled body, deconstruct of the ableism that is going on in India across the world. Extend all the competition they didn't perm, so they can't. Net benefit, we are solving for the affirmative team. Deconstruction is more valuable versus identifying these particular bodies, which is the rhetoric and the advocacy of the 1AC. They are identifying it and specifying it, whereas we are deconstructing this whole concept that is the only way to solve for it.
Pointing to particular disabled bodies is not some revolutionary strategy. It's what the state does every time it wants to say.
Pointing to particular disabled bodies is exactly what the state does when it tries to justify policies. That's what's problematic. They are pointing to particular instances of disability within their case. We are saying we need to deconstruct that entire thing in order to be able to solve for all of this. On to ACTAs. First of all, extend the cross application that discourse needs to come first. We are critiquing their language and the rhetoric they're using in the round, so this comes first. On the issue of totalizing, to say that it is the root cause of this, etc., that all of this type of oppression, their rhetoric of constructing a particular form of disability is the problem, and they are totally saying that ableism is the root cause of making oppression inevitable. It's not necessarily ableism. We need to deconstruct this binary, because when we say it is just ableism, we exclude all the other forms, because the struggles of a person who is considered disabled, but is also black and is also a woman, and maybe queer too, is going to be different than just ableism, and ableism is not the root cause of all these things.
Also, the fact that rhetoric surrounding disableism is used to justify things like racism doesn't mean it's the root cause.
The rhetoric that is used around disableism causing or being used to justify other forms of oppression does not mean it's the actual root cause. Having these root cause claims makes it more likely to have coalition fracture and less able to actually solve for things, extend the war, talking about the Chicana movement, etc. It doesn't matter if they're not saying it's the root cause of all oppression. In fact, they're saying it is the root cause of oppression is what is problematic. The next thing that they're like honing in on these differences, etc. They are creating the differences and entrenching the binary between what is considered disabled and what is considered able, and that is a problem that must be deconstructed in order to be able to solve for the impacts of ableism. Extend the counter role about my partner made that we must be talking about the best gained by the material impacts of our advocacy. This assumes theirs is that they have no arguments against us. We need to prioritize this type of intersectionality and preventing coalition fracture in trying to deconstruct ableism and all the other problems that we see extending from that overall. On the thesis, first thing it says is that this is used by the USFG, like the argument that our arguments are used by the USFG, etc., to suppress them, and that we're not defining people as disabled. They specifically are by reading that these pellet guns are making them disabled, that they're shooting at their eyes. It is the rhetoric of this. There is absolutely no risk that the negation team does any of this, because we are specifically deconstructing the construct of disableism and of the disabled body, which means we are able to solve this. We are not doing the exact same thing as the USFG and suppressing it. We're saying we are deconstructing this concept that is problematic. They said something about narratives. They have no narrative. They're just giving examples of particular disabled bodies and pinpointing them instead of deconstructing the concept as a whole. They also make an argument that this is like changing the state's definition, but that's like exactly what the state is doing. We are specifically deconstructing these definitions. They are using the state's definition, using the idea that if you shoot them in the eyes, they're automatically disabled, and that becomes the problem. We are saying, no, the entire concept is the problem.
No backfill explanations of why pigs are somehow ableist.
Don't allow any backflow explanation about how pigs are somehow ableist, because simply put, they're not. They're not able to. We're having an entirely different method that is good for all of this. Also, we make the argument that the state weaponizes disabled bodies in order to justify other policies. So we need the deconstruction of this idea of ableism in order to do anything. This type of interrogation that they're doing on the affirmative side is intensely problematic and will only continue this justification for other bad policies by these governments. The negative team is the only way to solve this. Extend our arguments on the plain text that they cannot solve because this construction can't solve for ableism. Okay. On solvency, we already said we solve better. On impacts, we extend the fact that we argue that we solve for the root cause within ableism is constructing them as different. They make no argument against this. So sure, we don't want a bright line. Bright lines are bad, but we're saying we are causing these Like, we control the internal link to disposable populations as well as inevitable war because they are constructing them as different. That is the problem. If we do not deconstruct this idea of disabled versus able being different, this disposable population continues, inevitable war, all of this continues. They make no argument. It is not try or die for the affirmative. If there's any risk that they bite into this and cannot solve for deconstruction, we must vote negative.
The counter plan, well, there's an overview on top, then the counter plan, the dissad, and then case in reverse order, so impacts, thesis, what is this, framework? Everyone good? This debate is a question of starting points. The starting point of the PMC is to say, look at particular people who are disabled in a world of arms sales to India. We should solve for those particular people. Our argument is that that starting point is what makes disablism, and thus, according to their arguments, all of the kinds of oppression inevitable. The idea that we can just point to particular people and say, you are disabled, you are not, is the way that we construct a disabled body that makes these kinds of things possible in the first place. You are conceding framing that says the ability to view people as different is the root cause of disposability. This means there's a 100% chance that the counterplan solves all of the F. If we went any rhetorical disadvantages to the approach taken by the affirmative, or any methodological disadvantages, you can instantly sign your ballot neg. On the counterplan, no permutation here is really bad news for them because it means that we fundamentally win the ability to solve their affirmative while starting from a better starting point. At the point where we are passing the same plan as them, but merely looking at it as a deconstruction of the disabled body rather than a deconstruction of particular examples of ableism. That ultimately is the reason as to why they are unable to solve. The idea that they would be able to focus on particular examples of the disabled body and somehow solve for ableism is fundamentally the rhetoric that allows ableism to happen. You have conceded the argument that says the state is already doing their plan in the status quo. The state is already going around and saying, look at these people who got their limbs struck off. Look at these people who got their eyes shut out. Therefore, we should invade. Therefore, we should do this. Therefore, we should do that. There's nothing revolutionary about the strategy of the 1AC. It's fundamentally a strategy of what is currently occurring in the state. The only possible strategy that can solve the impacts they talk about is one that deconstructs the root cause. Our counterplan solves 100% of the gap. There's no explanation of why the bright line argument is key. They're going to go for this in their last speech. They're going to say we don't have a bright line, which means we can't solve disabled bodies. But you have conceded our arguments which say rhetoric is a prior question. Ultimately means that it's not a question of whether you're able to solve for particular disabled bodies, because if the plan text solves for disabled bodies, we're both cutting off arms sales, and so we both solve for those particular disabled bodies. It's a question of what methodological baggage we bring to that discussion. Our argument is that your baggage is bad and our baggage is good to the extent that we endorse a broader deconstructionist approach that has a possibility of solving these arguments in the future. On the dissent, one more argument on the plan. I'm not sure where you flowed this argument, but this argument that somehow the PIC is exclusionary is probably something you've seen going for a lot in the final speech. You should not allow any backfill on what this means. I think it's pretty clear out of the MG that no one has any idea why it is that PICs are exclusionary to the disabled body. It means any new reclarification of what that argument means or why it is a term is something that they would have to do in the MG. It's completely new in the PMR. Don't buy what they're probably going to be doing. On the dissent, you've conceded it's fundamentally a question of different starting points, and you've conceded that your starting point is bad. At the point where you start with a particular conception of who is able and who is disabled, that is the link argument we talk about. That ultimately means that your rhetoric and your discourse make it impossible for your affirmative to ever solve. Even if it's possible that you're able to recognize the difference in the MG argument is that we recognize that difference just as well as you, and that in the PMC, your original starting point, which you're unable to sever from because because you said rhetoric is binding, is reliant on the idea of particular able or enabled or disabled bodies. The question is, if they are not tied to a particular conception of who is or is not disabled, then why is it that they think that shooting someone's eye out makes them disabled? That seems to be the implication of the link argument they're making. It seems pretty clear to me that their approach by constructing a particular disabled and a particular able body is the problem. Disadvantage is a takeout to the solvency of the affirmative. We control the link to the method. Counterplan solves all that. On the impacts, I want you to extend the most important argument in the debate, which is we control the only cause for how disposable populations happen. Biologically, people become disposable to you when you can view them as fundamentally different. This means the approach with the highest chance of solving both the impacts of the case and the various oppressions they talk about is the approach that encourages us to deconstruct the idea that one person could be fundamentally different from another. To the extent that they're affirmative, its original PMC constructs the idea of a disabled and able body. They make this disposable population inevitable because they construct an other who is different enough from us that we can view them as disposable. The counterplan eliminates that distinction. The counterplan makes people not be disposable because we view them as fundamentally the same as ourselves. On the thesis, don't let them go for any narrative argument. There's no framing for why narratives matter or why they're act as a narrative out of the speech. Ultimately means that anything they go for, there would be new. Yeah, we've already unpacked it out at great length. I think why those links specifically are bad, why they specifically mean they should lose. Extend on their framework. The discourse is a prior question. This is an argument both in the PMC and the LOC and the MO. It's been extended multiple times. No new answers in the final speech. This means rhetoric is binding. We have a counterclaim that solves 100% of the F. Ultimately means that there's no reason to vote affirmative. There's only a risk that the rhetoric and method of the 1AC makes it impossible for their act to solve. So overview this counterplan versus.
Overview. Our argument is that the state is creating the binaries in which they define who the disabled body is and who the able body is. We give examples of what the state deems as what the binary and what the bright line is in the status quo. We are not creating a rhetorical advocacy in which we deem one body as being disabled and the other being able, but rather the state is constructing these norms, and those norms are something that we are able to deconstruct through the solvency of the affirmative, which is 100% conceded. I say that because what we're doing is we're disrupting what the state perceives as disabled by springboarding this discussion, meaning that we don't buy into their disadvantage because we aren't the ones who are creating this rhetorical advocacy. We're simply framing what the state deems as to be disabled, which is why it's in the thesis. And the thesis is what's wrong in the status quo right now, and that's how the state perceives these people. And at the point where you're rejecting the notion that the state is trying to perceive these people as disabled, your counterplan will not accomplish anything, because first you have to understand that the state functions in the realm.
There's no argument made in the MG that our counterplan somehow fails to recognize what the state is doing. There was an argument that we need to construct binaries, but not one that we need to recognize the binaries made by the state. We would say the counterplan does that.
My response is that in the MG, we argue that your counterplan fails to see bright lines. I'm standing on that argument.
Under consideration?
Huh?
Under consideration. Continue.
On the counterplan, there is no solvency to the counterplan. There's only a risk of solvency to the affirmative because we understand the binary. We are understanding the binaries that the state is constructing right now. While they fail to critique that, they reject the notion that the state is trying to create binaries and are running a counterplan in the post-fiat advocating with the state, meaning that in their world, one, they don't understand how these binaries are being created, meaning that re-entrenches the impacts which are being created, disposable populations in inevitable war, because they fail to understand the epistemology of the state. The second argument is that
this is a straight-up new solvency block against the counterplan. The idea that somehow we need to be able to recognize the binaries of the state in order to solve for disableism is an argument that A, was never made, and B, was definitely never made on the counterplan. This is like brand new.
Your response?
all right.
Proceed with caution.
debate. Let's look at solvency 1. Extend all the solvency points, meaning that we are the team that is deconstructing the normative relationship between the disabled body and the state and the status quo. But the only way to deconstruct that disabled body is to first understand the norm which is being done, which is being created by the state. Extend framework point number 3. For that a rejection of ableism in this one instance is the most ethical thing to do. The most important thing I want you guys to extend there is that failure to do so is a sit endorsement of the status quo, meaning that first we have to understand the binaries with the state is constructing before we actually try to advocate, before we actually try to enact the discussion. And the only team who has a risk of understanding what the binaries of the state are is the plan text, meaning that we're the only team who gains internal links to our impact, that of disposable populations and that of inevitable war. Now let's move on to line by line on this. They give a great disadvantage about rhetoric, but that sadly doesn't link because their internal link analysis is being derived from the thesis, but the thesis is pretty much what we're trying to argue against, right? We argue that the state is creating these binaries in the status quo, and the state is creating these binaries, meaning that we don't link because we are trying to deconstruct these binaries created by the state. Just because the state perceives as someone who doesn't have eyes to be disabled isn't a reason to vote the affirmative team down just because we're trying to deconstruct the. Are you getting control of that? Oh.
An actual point of order, yeah. Let's just note that he was watching and waiting there, so keep that in mind. The point of order is this is a completely new reclarification of what your link argument meant. Throughout the first two speeches, you were pretty explicit about the state makes people disabled, and now you're just trying to backtrack. And at this point in the round, you're trying to backtrack and say, no. That was just us replicating, talking about why the state thinks these things are bad, whereas really we don't think that. I think that is a completely new reclarification of the links that they should not have access to.
Okay, my partner came up in the MG. He stated that this is how the state perceives the disabled body. Now let me pause. I'm pretty sure these are arguing against the disadvantage because it's the only argument he gave against the disadvantage.
Under consideration.
This is not a question of impacts because both teams are trying to gain internal links to the impacts, but it's a question of which team gains internal links to that impacts, and the only team that is able to gain internal links to our impacts of disposable populations and inevitable war is going to be the affirmative because we first deconstruct the binaries which are created by the state before we try to spark this discussion. While the negation doesn't do that, that's inherently a reason to vote the plan text up over the counterpoint. Anything you want me to add? Nah. Okay.